I would now request the chairpersons for the next session to please join us. I request Dr. Surendra Pandav to please switch on his camera and unmute himself. I also request Dr. Tanuj Dada, Dr. Shrisha Senthil, our co-convener, Dr. Amit Porwal, and the moderator, Dr. Manisha, to please unmute himself and also switch on the camera. Over to the chairman.
Thank you, Nikhil. So Dr. Manisha is the moderator. Dr. Manish, are you there? Dr. Manish?
So Amit, you are everything. You can start. You are in this session only.
Yes, sir. I would request Dr. Pandav sir to take over because I have to look at multiple things. So, the first talk is a debate. So, Dr. Pandav, I request you to take over.
Yes. We have Dr. Debashish Chakraborty sir to start his screen sharing. Then, in the meanwhile, or Karan, 4-minute ka timer rakhna, please.
Okay, welcome all of you to this session. The co-chair, Dr. Tanuj Dada, Sirisha, she's there. Amit is already there, and Manish, I'm sure he's joining shortly. He's not already there. This is going to be a good session again on a number of topics, interesting topics are there, and I think without wasting much time, I'll hand over to the moderator. Amit, maybe Manish is not there, then you can moderate the session.
So the first talk is we have a debate, PACG with early cataract, and cataract extraction in all versus no need for cataract extraction in all. So the cataract extraction in all is going to be spoken by Dr. Debashish Chakraborty. So Dr. Debashish, over to you. Please start your presentation, Dr. Debashish. Unmute yourself. Yeah.
So please stick to your timings so that we have some time for discussion.
So we can see your screen also, and you're audible. Could you please start with your presentation?
Thank you, everybody. So I would speak for FECO in case of patient of PACG with early cataract.
Please speak a bit louder.
I have no financial interest in this topic.
No, Dr. Debashish, we can't hear you. Please speak louder.
Am I audible, sir?
Now you're audible.
Now it is better.
Okay. So I can think of 3 scenarios. One is a patient with recently diagnosed PACG and early cataract. So here the options are between FECO and LPI. Or we can have a patient with PACG status post SPI with early cataract where the IOP is controlled. Here the options are between FECO or FECO-TRAP versus continuum medical treatment. Or we can have a patient PACG status post PACG with early cataract, but the IOP is not controlled. Here I can think of FECO or FECO-TRAP versus trabeculectomy. We'll see each of these situations. First of all, PACG and early cataract. Here the conventional option is LPI. However, FECO is advocated instead of LPI in some recent studies. Various studies have shown that lens extraction surgery is a recognized management approach and often associated with the reduction in IOP and widening of the anterior chamber angle. And the objective evidence to this is got from the anterior segment OCT images, which show significant increase in the anterior chamber angle parameters. We must mention the EAGLE study here. So it was a large randomized controlled trial which compared CLE with LPI. And although there was only a modest difference in IOP after 3 years of follow-up in favor of CLE, there was a considerable reduction in need for further medications or glaucoma surgery and better quality of life after CLE compared with LPI. So LPI has been the standard initial approach for angle closure disease, but it is not free from complications. Cataract progression has been reported in patients after LPI, particularly among females, older patients, and patients with diabetes. And other potential complications include endothelial cell damage, IOP spikes, anterior uveitis, pigment dispersion, and hyphema. Also, there is no guarantee that a PACG will not progress after LPI. Up to 1/3 of angles have been shown to not open following laser peripheral iridectomy. Let's come to the second scenario where PI has already been done, patient has early cataract, and the IOP is controlled with treatment. Here, we can continue the medical treatment, but FECO will also be beneficial in many patients. Why? It will tackle the cataract, it will control IOP better, may reduce the number of medications, make subsequent follow-up examination easier because there's no fear of rise of IOP after dilatation, and the patients will have better perimetry and OCT. And there is definite clue that some patients will definitely improve after lens extraction. Like if the anterior segment OCT shows a high lens vault, the lens vault we know is the perpendicular distance between the anterior pole of the lens and the back of the cornea. If this distance is more than 1/3 of the perpendicular distance between the back of the cornea and the line joining the scleral spur, these patients have high lens vault, and they are shown to have the lens is the major cause of angle closure in this patient. And IOP lowering after phaco has been known. Up to 2 to 12 millimeter of mercury reduction of IOP can occur. The last scenario is patient with advanced PI has been done cataract. So here the option is between TRAB or phaco and phaco TRAB. TRAB will be more suitable in open angle glaucoma with minimal or no cataract. It may or may not control the IOP well if the lens plays a major role. TRAB will hasten the cataract, and post-trabeculectomy complications like shallow AC and aqueous misdirection will be very difficult to manage in a phakic eye. On the other hand, phaco or phaco TRAB will open up the angle and lower IOP, will definitely improve vision to some extent. Phaco will also eliminate the need of a subsequent cataract surgery, which may jeopardize the blade. There is less incidence of shallow AC and aqueous misdirection, and easier to manage these complications if it occurs. To conclude, there is irrefutable role of lens in angle closure disease. Phaco increases the antechamber depth and reduces the IOP, and has several other advantages. Therefore, phaco is helpful in all stages of angle closure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Debashish. To speak against it, we have Dr. Manish Singh. Dr. Manish, please share your slide. Manish, please start your presentation.
So thank you so much. So I am here to speak that no need for cataract extraction in all PACG with early cataract. So this all term has very important. So we need, so basically we are discussing about PACG with early cataract. So we have to understand what is the topic of discussion today. And in medical science, there are very few things which actually follow that all and none law. It's mainly, mostly, or usually. So if you see this particular situation which we are discussing, a PACG. What is a PACG? A primary angle closure with evidence of glaucomatous optic neuropathy. Now I'll just discuss a case so that we'll make it more practical. So this is a young lady who walks into your OPD, a 45-year-old woman with a 6/6 and 6 vision, had a PI done say 4 or 5 years back. She's well controlled on timolol with a pressure of say 12 to 13 millimeter mercury. She's not complaining. She just come for routine evaluation. You have spotted an early cataract. You've done a gonoscopy. You can see the angle is open. She already had a PI, and there are some early disc changes. So this is the situation we are discussing, a PACG with an early cataract. And you have done a field. Her field last 3 to 4 years are fairly stable. Now, in a situation like this, will you really going to operate her cataract? The answer is definite no. Because any surgery, any investigation should have a purpose. There is no need for doing a surgery just for the sake of it. And this lady, or a case like this, where the pressure is normal, vision is normal, angles are open, field are stable, she is not complaining, we don't need to unnecessarily put her to any risk. And God forbid, cataract surgery and angle closure is anyway difficult. She ends up in a corneal decompensation or a PC rent or a endophthalmitis, which can happen in any surgery. So it will be very difficult to justify her, and you can also end up in a medical legal problem. We have to understand when you talk about guideline, we have to see pan-India. Not everyone is a good cataract surgeon like Debashish Da, and he was talking about EAGLE trial, and he himself highlighted that yes, EAGLE trial has highlighted the role of lens extraction in angle closure disease, but in a specific subgroup of patient. And even in this trial, it has got its fallacies. For example, the gonoscopy data was missing in almost 50% of patient, and gonoscopy is extremely vital to decide which patient cataract surgery will help and which patient it may not help. They have themselves said that unless you have 1.7 millimeter of difference of intraocular pressure, the study will not be significant, and they found only 1 millimeter of difference in the two groups. Plus, say a lady like this may not like to remove her lens because she will have a loss of accommodation also. They've also highlighted that it's a demanding surgery, should be done by qualified surgeons who are comfortable in dealing with shallow chambers, but it has got its own risk of complication. So we have to understand that ophthalmology is beyond just big cities like Calcutta, Delhi, or metro city. When you go to the periphery or smaller town, tier 2, tier 3 city, what message you are going to young cataract surgeons? They can't just knock off every cataract in a patient with PACG. There has to be some indication, I like to share the words of our teacher and Dr. Debashish, the teacher, that we should not give a message that cataract is a malignant disease which not operated will metastasize to your neighbor's clinic. We have to understand, yes, there are indications. If it's a visually significant cataract, if on a gonoscopy or a ASOC, you can show that there is a lens-induced closure in these patients, definitely you have right to do cataract surgery. Although we have to understand that cataract surgery is not a magic treatment for angle closure. There are studies which have shown 3 to 4 millimeter of IOP reduction. There are studies which have shown 20 millimeter IOP reduction. So definitely the results are variable. Plus there have also been studies where they've shown that pressure can actually increase after cataract surgery also. Plus even in PSCG patient may still continue to progress after cataract surgery. So cataract surgery is not the final treatment for every angle closure glaucoma patient. Also very important, as Dr. Ramanji Sihota madam has highlighted, in Indian scenario, we have to understand it's a costly intervention, has its risk of complication, and maybe the surgeons in Tier 2, Tier 3 city or maybe pan-India are not very qualified to deal with all types of cataracts in shallow chamber. So to conclude, I'll say definitely just got a role, but has risk and cost involved. Decide on the stage of the disease, extent of synechia, and the lens-induced closure. But definitely cataract surgery is not indicated in every cataract with PSCG. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you, Dr. Debashish. So now we have 2 minutes for discussion, and I request Dr. Pandav, Dr. Tanuj Dada, and Dr. Sirisha to please give one comment.
I think both of the speakers, they spoke very well in defense of their own. And there's no doubt, I think, as Manish said, that this in medical sciences, there's nothing, like something that works for everybody. But I think when we talk about angle closure glaucoma, we do understand more and more that lens has a role to play, especially, I think, when Dr. Debashish mentioned that if the lens vault is high, and if you have a smaller eye with a high lens vault or a lens which is thicker in size, I think those will be some of the patient where you would need lens extraction would help. And by and large, if you look at the angle closure disease, if you then most of these patients, they would have a reduction in intraocular pressure following a cataract extraction. But having said that, we are talking about angle closure disease and early cataract. So I think most of these patients could be benefited from cataract surgery, but certainly we are not talking about the clear lens extraction. So I think that we have to, for that you have to be really very selective. So my preference, my thinking is that cataract does play some role in genesis of angle closure disease, especially in predisposed eyes. And those would be the eyes where cataract surgery would be justified. But again, you had to clinically evaluate these patients more carefully and not recommend cataract surgery as a therapy for angle closure glaucoma as it like it.
Thank you, Dr. Pandav. Dr. Tanuj, one quick short comment.
So I would tend to agree with Dr. Manish that you have to be careful in patient selection, and only if it is indicated if pressure is high despite PI and there is a definite cataract causing visual loss, then you should go ahead, because we have faced problem because one eye you do and patient has loss of accommodation and quality of life suffers. So that has to be taken into account. So a more cautious approach has to be adopted.
Yeah, Dr. Sirisha.
Agree, I think. So we're running out of time, but yeah, we need to be very, very selective. And I think there is no one shoe that fits all. So it is useful, cataract extraction is useful, but we have to be selective in choosing the right patient.
Yeah. So to carry on with the same discussion, we have our next talk by Dr. Rita Damankar. She's going to talk on, does clear lens extraction have a role in managing PACD, a critical review? So over to you, Dr. Rita. I request the AV person to please on the timer.
Thank you very much. Now that we have already,
8 minutes. Yeah.
Now that we've already just heard this big discussion, my role becomes a little clearer because I just got to do a critical review of clear lens extraction. So extraction of a clear lens when visual symptoms are minimal is definitely a controversial subject. And the EAGLE study was done to look at it and many more. Let us therefore look at both the positive and the negative aspects. What are the risk factors associated with angle closure? We know more age, the mean ACD, which is much lesser, We know that they have occludable angles and females are more common to have it. We know apart from smaller anterior chamber width, area and volume, they have thicker irises, greater lens vault and iris curvature. And all of these factors clearly point to a lens extraction as a mode of treatment in PACD. However, let us look at the positive aspects. What does history have to say? All of the studies that have been done right from 1945 onwards have only spoken about cataract extraction. They have not talked about, none of them have actually spoken about a clear lens extraction. And all of the time we have known that cataract extraction probably does yield good results. So cataract extraction for PACD has been practiced for many years. And are such spectacular outcomes actually expected with a clear lens extraction? Should one really opt for a clear lens extraction as a primary procedure in absence of visual symptoms? Non-invasive treatments like drugs and lasers do give us the desired result. There have been comparisons with phacoemulsification and phaco-trap, wherein the intraocular pressure is definitely better maintained with the phaco-trap than the phacoemulsification, only there are a little more complications. So what is
sorry to interrupt, ma'am, sorry to interrupt you. Your slideshow is not there. Your slide is stuck on the first slide itself.
My slideshow is not there.
Yeah, it is stuck on the first slide.
It is on the title slide. It is not, you're not moving the slides.
Oh my God.
We are able to hear you very well.
Yeah, you are very nicely audible, but your slides are not moving.
I don't know why my slides are not showing, because I can see them moving on my computer.
Okay. I think
ma'am, it's okay. We'll hear you nicely.
Okay, so the standard care and angle closure is laser iridotomy followed by medications. If nothing works, then there is filtering surgery. And in case there is a cataractous lens, then a lens removal as well. What are we proposing? A clear lens extraction, which is a difficult surgical procedure. The lens is large, the chamber is shallow. There are plenty of refractive surprises due to wrong predictability of the ELP. The corneal endothelial damage may happen. Infections are something that we need to think about. Opening up the angle does not change the pathology in chronic angle closure glaucoma. And the quality of life in terms of vision in a clear lens extraction is clearly not a question at all. And there are more problems, because there can be zonular instability, there can be an atonic or an atrophic iris, making pupillary dilation difficult. Long-term use of pilocarpine can again lead to posterior synechiae. Pupillary stretching because of this can lead to uveitis and chronic inflammation. How does clear lens extraction then reduce the intraocular pressure? Probably because of deepening with the viscoelastic and the hydrostatic pressure during surgery, which can strip open some pre-existing peripheral synechiae. Probably the phospholirrigation could flush open the trabecular meshwork as well. The cataract extraction deepens the chamber, opens the angle, and increases the aqueous outflow, and probably, therefore, is known to be useful. In primary angle closure, clear lens extraction has shown good results in terms of IOP lowering, reduced need for medications, and a decrease in the PAS. However, this may not happen in all patients despite the opening of the angles, and therefore, a glaucoma filtering surgery is required. But there are negative aspects. PACD is not a single disease entity. It is a continuum of different stages. Each individual can be unique in terms of disease stage, and the management profile has to be tailored. Ravi, Thomas and all have described the role of lens extraction in the management of each stage. So in PACS, for instance, a prophylactic PI is advocated due to the relative safety of the procedure without resorting to a clear lens extraction. And there have been plenty of studies done on clear lens extraction by Tham et al., by Dada et al. And there is, of course, the most famous EAGLE study, which has been actually, I think, discussed in great details just now by Manish. And we know that the EAGLE study showed a mean IOP just 1 millimeter less. We know that only 3 more letters in the ETDRS chart was seen, and because there was no problem with vision with the clear lens extraction, the certain modeling methods showed that the ICER would drop a little bit together with the QALY gained in 5 years. The CLE would reduce the need for glaucoma therapy. These factors may improve the quality of life. However, there are studies which also prove to the contrary, and there are studies which say that there is no evidence to support lens extraction as a treatment for chronic PACG. There is a study bias in the EAGLE study where 805 individuals were assessed for inclusion, 386 patients were found to be ineligible, 419 patients were included in the study, of which only 208 patients actually underwent the clear lens extraction, which just goes to show how much sampling bias there was. And it is also not clear how many patients had lens-related factors like lens vault or intumescent cataract in these patients. The quality of life questionnaires used by the EAGLE study may give rise to erroneous and biased results. The study protocol itself, the details of the protocols were not available, and therefore it is not possible to analyze the influence of these factors in the study. In Dada's study, again, would the results have been different if the medications were added or changed? Because within 30 days, within 8 weeks after the diagnosis, the patients were operated. There are plenty more flaws in the EAGLE study. Therefore, not performing a procedure that is safe, easy, and effective, such as a peripheral iridotomy or an iridoplasty, and waiting for 4 to 8 weeks to perform a clear lens extraction appears to be pretty improper. IOP reduction following lens extraction does not seem to be related to the extent of the peripheral anterior synechiae prior to surgery, but it is more related to angle width. A gonioscopy, which Manish has already said, may overestimate the degree of synechial closure. The refractive outcomes are are just not correct, and you can get a lot of refractive surprises in a healthy population. This is because we do not know the estimated chamber depth post-op, and there could be a very poor refractive predictability or a suboptimal predictability. Plus, we know that there's going to be a loss of accommodation following the clear lens extraction in a relatively young population. We've got to look at the complications. Intraoperatively, there could be complications like the PC tear, the iris prolapse, and the vitreous loss. And post-operatively, we could have a malignant glaucoma, flat AC, corneal edema, macular edema, spike in the pressures, and not to forget endophthalmitis. Other things that we need to know are false interpretations, because we know that the significantly low IOP mentioned in many reports is often ascribed to the phenomenon of regression to the mean. Higher is the intraocular pressure, greater is the IOP drop after phacoemulsification. And the baseline pressure in the EAGLE study was greater than 30 millimeters, and in Dada's study was 25 millimeters. So this could be attributed to the regression of the mean. In the EAGLE study, we did not see any change in the visual field deterioration as compared to the standard care groups. However, the number of glaucoma surgeries performed subsequently in the two groups have significant differences.
Apologies to interrupt now, but the time is up.
Okay, just one last slide. And therefore, clear lens extraction still remains controversial. And until more studies come up to show us what is the benefit of going ahead with a clear lens extraction, I think as of now, we better stick to the standard care. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rita.
Can I request the chairperson to invite our next speaker?
Thank you.
Without wasting much of time, and my next speaker is myself. So, Nikhil, I hope my slides are visible and I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you're ready to go. Timer 10 minutes. Can we get started, please?
So I'm going to talk on cataract with glaucoma. When do we do a cataract surgery or a combined surgery? So no financial disclosures, and we all know that cataract and glaucoma is the leading cause of blindness and is the most common ocular condition associated with the aging process, and the prevalence is increasing due to increasing lifespan. And we also know that there's an increased risk of nucleosclerotic cataract with elevated IOP and with the use of glaucoma medications. So what are the surgical approaches to managing this combined disease? We have the cataract extraction alone with IOL implantation. Then we have the sequential surgery. There is a two-step procedure where you do a trap first, followed by cataract surgery later. Then you have a combined surgery, that is a cataract plus glaucoma in the same sitting. So when do we do a cataract surgery? What are the indications for that? We should have a visually disability cataract with IOP under good control. There should be a mild glaucomatous damage, minimal visual field loss. Patient is on 1 or 2 well-tolerated anti-glaucoma topical medications, and the patient is also compliant with these anti-glaucoma medications. The advantage is that there's a long-term IOP reduction in IOP of up to 5 years. There's less need of post-operative medications. There is small reduction in IOP by 1 to 3 millimeters after the surgery. Disadvantages being there's an early post-operative IOP rise, especially within 24 hours and max within 2 hours post-operatively. So you need a close monitoring and prophylactic medical treatment for that. Combined surgery is a triple procedure. The indications are cataract with glaucoma patients. When you have failure to achieve the target pressure by medications, the issues related to compliance, adherence, or drug-induced side effects. When you have a borderline controlled IOP, disease progression, or an advanced glaucomatous optic atrophy, despite maximum medical therapy, or an uncontrolled glaucoma, but an urgent need to restore vision when two separate operations are not feasible. So advantages, it eliminates the need for two separate surgeries. Early post-operative IOP rises significantly less. There's visual improvement there's improvement in both visual acuity and IOP, and there's a decrease in the number of glaucoma medications. So coming to the surgical considerations, what are the surgical considerations? Preoperatively, you should first analyze what is the significant visual loss, what is the cause, whether it is due to cataract or glaucoma. So accordingly, we have to counsel the patient. Then you have to do a perfect slit lamp examination, look for pseudoexfoliation, shallow AC, myopic pupil, etc. Fundus examination, always look whether the vision loss is due to glaucomatous optic neuropathy or due to any other macular pathology. When you consider the intraoperative considerations, you always, most of the time, because the glaucoma specialists come across with myotic pupil. So be prepared to use one of these pupil expansion devices like ring slits or expanders, or to manage to use the small pupil strategies, even if you're doing a small incision cataract surgery. Viscoelastic suspension, sodium hyaluronate, it maintains the flat AC and deepens the anterior chamber, but it should be thoroughly washed to avoid post-operative IOP spike. SPMC causes less post-operative IOP elevation when you compare with other high-density viscoelastic. The capsule axis should be of adequate size of 5 to 6 millimeters, and the IOL selection that is very careful not to be used AC IOL at all. Now, techniques for cataract surgery alone, the cataract decision should be positioned to maximize the future bleb survival whenever needed. So clear cornea temporal location is preferred, avoid much of the conjunctival handling, and if possible, keep the superior conjunctival area virgin so that we can have a future trap if at all needed, the area is still raw. Now, techniques for combined surgery, you have the single site, which is the SICS phaco plus trap, that is done to the same site. It involves less surgical time. Then you have the two-site technique, wherein the phaco is done through a separate clear corneal temporal incision as the first step, followed by trap as the superior levers. The only problem is it involves slightly more time when we compare with the single site technique. So just showing a small video clip of both the single site as well as the twin site technique. I think just 1 minute, I'll just make sure that the video is playing. Can somebody just guide me, Nikhil, how much time do I have left?
6 minutes.
I have an ample amount of time. Okay, no problem. So this is a video showing the single site technique on the top and the two site technique at the bottom. So most important step is you always take a proper bridal suture, whether you want to take a superior bridal suture or you want to take a corneal traction suture. These sutures are very important as to give a better exposure. Always mark your conjunctival site with the help of a caliper. Never do the surgery without marking the conjunctival flap size. So always mark it. When I'm doing an SICS, I usually take 6 millimeter. And when I'm doing a phaco, I take 3.5 to 4 millimeter. You mark your conjunctival site, do a subconjunctival band dissection, identify the bleeders and cauterize only the bleeders. Do a gentle cautery, don't overdo the cautery, because whenever you overdo the cautery, after you create the scleral flap, there will be shrinkage of the scleral flap. So be gentle when you're doing the cautery. Again, mark your scleral area to make the scleral flap. And if you are going to use any antimetabolite, the take-home message what I would give for that is don't use cotton sponge, use a wax sponge to use because and count the number of species of wax sponge you are putting on the bare sclera, and always to count and take it out. The time, the concentration depends on what the case, the way you are dealing with. So always thoroughly wash the antimetabolite, then start making the scleral flap. Now the trick to make the scleral flap is you take, you go to apex of the scleral flap and just raise the apex with the help of a 15 number blade. Once you have done that, then just stretch the scleral flap and just touch the cutting edge of the 15 number blade, and you will get you start go on doing that, and you get a smooth, uniform superior the scleral flap. Once you come with the scleral flap, then when you're doing a twin site surgery, shift temporally and do a clear corneal phaco, a routine phaco as how you have been used to it. And if you're doing an SICS trap with a single site or a single site phaco trap, once you created the scleral flap, make the entry side ports and start your routine cataract surgery the way you have been doing it. For SICS tunnel, once you have made the superior scleral flap, make the two lateral pockets, make the side port, and then with the help of a keratome, do the entry and do the normal SICS steps. And as I told you earlier also, that most of the time we as glaucoma surgeons face with come across with small pupils. So we have to be prepared pre-operatively that how we are going to manage these small pupils. So you can see this was a case, I planned a malign ring. Now again, when we look at the rings hooks or expanders, the expanders or the malignant ring or the BH does wonder, because we are implanting those expansion devices to the same main entry which we have created, and we are not creating multiple entries as what we do for the iris hooks. So now the Rexis is done. You can see that the cataract steps have been followed. So all the steps, I mean, there's no special technique of how you are going to do your cataract surgery, whatever technique you are comfortable with, whether it's a hard cataract, whether it's cataract with pseudo exfoliation, whether it is soft cataract, whatever type of cataract, you do the way you have been doing it. Just make sure don't have a prolonged surgical time, because a prolonged surgical time is going to make what is going to happen is any iris touch or any fluidic fluids will be hitting the iris tissue, and that will cause more prostaglandin release. So the success of your surgery will reduce. So try to do as fast as possible. Once you have done the cataract surgery and implanted the IOL, you can make the internal ostium, as you saw in the superior case, that you can do it with the help of 11 number blade or a Kelly sponge or an MVR, whatever sharp instrument you are comfortable with. Usually make a 2x2 or 2x1 internal ostium. And once this internal ostium is done, the superior PI is done, and then the sutures are implanted. So you can see the phaco trap, that is a twin site. I'm making the internal ostium with the help of 11 number blade. 2x1 internal ostium is being made, and once the internal ostium is created, the peripheral iridotomy is done. The trick to avoid the repeated iris prolapse, don't overinflate the anterior chamber with the help of viscoelastic substance. Just make sure there is an adequate visco in the AC. This will prevent the iris from repeatedly prolapsing into the surgical site. Now, scleral flap suture, you can put one releasable, two releasable, or intermittent. It is up to you. The trick to implant the releasable sutures I have already shown. You pass one suture parallel to the limbus, then from the limbus perpendicular to the limbus into the scleral flap, and then from the scleral flap into the intact sclera. Take 4 throws and then tie it as a shoelace form. So it is up to you whether you want to use one releasable, two releasable, and one intermittent, or only one releasable suture. So once you have put the releasable suture, next is the suturing of the conjunctival tissue. That is very, very important. Always take the episcleral bite or the limbal bite, so that your conjunctiva is anchored to the limbus, so that there is no bleb retraction. If you do that and tightly tighten the suture, make a tight flap, there won't be any leakage from the limbal side. And this is the way you are going to do your combined surgery. So variations, I already told you what are the variations on making the internal flap. You can cut the trabecular meshwork either with the help of an MVR or with the help of a Kelly sponge. Whatever you are comfortable with, you can use it. So these are the different ways of making the internal ostium, but I'm quite sure most of them are using Kelly sponge, and please do continue with whatever you're comfortable with. And here I end my presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir, for finishing it 1 minute before time. And since
I think we can go to the next speaker. I think
yes, Dr. Sumita Dubey.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sunita. Over to you. And you are going to talk on the video assisted skill transfer, that is trabeculotomy, pre-op procedure and post-op management. Dr. Sunita?
Yeah. Can you see?
Yeah. No, you have started sharing your screen. We can see your screen and we can hear you also. Please proceed.
Okay, just a minute. I'm not able to do it full screen.
There's an hourglass window below. Yeah, somewhere below. We can see your mouse. Down.
No,
Somewhere down. Nikhil, Karan, can you help her to make the full screen?
F5, ma'am. Can you press F5?
Can you just press F5, ma'am?
Okay.
Number 4 or 5 आपको पता है 1 2 3 4 उसके ऊपर F5 दबा दीजिए please.
Yeah, F5 I have pressed.
फिर भी नहीं हो रहा है?
No.
I think
Function F5 रहेगा. Control के बाजू में एक FN करके बटन रहेगा.
Otherwise, you work out on the presentation and we'll take Dr. Pandav's talk next, and you can come back later.
Okay.
Okay. So Dr. Pandav, over to you. You are going to talk on VAST, that is glaucoma drainage devices.
Okay, I'll try to.
Yeah. Stop sharing the screen, Dr. Smita.
Yeah.
Just one second.
Okay. Can I start share now?
Yes.
Okay. Is it visible?
Yeah, yes, it is visible.
Yes, yes.
Please start the timer of 10 minutes.
And you can hear me also? Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
So thank you, AIS, for this session. And I'll be talking about the glaucoma drainage devices, essentially a video-assisted program. So I'll be showing more videos, less theory. Glaucoma drainage devices, we know, are very frequently used, especially in cases which are refractive to, where the IOP control is very difficult. And especially when a surgery has already failed, particularly patients like NVG or uveitis patients and failed TRAVs, and if there's a lot of scarring. So these are the kind of cases who will need a glaucoma drainage device. So we have two types of drainage devices, valve and non-valve, both are available to us in India. This technique is essentially the same with the, some difference. So how they work is basically that you have a tube which drains the aqueous from the anterior chamber into the subcutaneous space where you have a reservoir, and the capsule is formed around the plate of the implant, and from where the aqueous goes out and the IOP is controlled. So essentially, I'll take you through the steps. This is an NVG which has been lasered and now well controlled. We are doing a primary tube for this patient. So what we do is you open up the one quadrant, usually a spherotemporal quadrant, and I like to open at the limbus, but you could go a few millimeters behind as well. Give a little radial incision, then spirally as well as the temporal side, so that the access is easy. And you can see the line of the intermuscular line is very clear, and beyond that, the sclera is very little avascular and white. And the important thing is to dissect the subtenuous space as neatly as possible without shredding the tenuous capsule. And the next important step is to prime the implant. This is very important in case of AGV. Basically, what it means is that you cannulate the tube of the implant and push some VSS through it. And once you can see the VSS coming through the implant, the valve area, your device is ready to be done. The opening pressure, the first time opening pressure of the implant is very high. So if you forget this step, then this valve is not going to function. The next, you have to suture the implant to the sclera, and you have exposed it nicely. If you need help, you can use some muscle hooks to retract. By and large, most of the time, we don't really need anything. So I like to put some pre-placed sutures, usually 10 millimeters from the limbus, somewhere between 8 to 10, but I prefer to be on the upper side. And once the pre-placed sutures are put there, then you know where the implant is going to go exactly. You can use any non-absorbable suture. Most people use 8-0 or 7-0 Prolene, but I prefer to use this Dacron sutures 5-0 or 6-0. This is because of the needle, basically, because this needle is spatulated side cutting needle, which is specially designed for passing suture in the sclera. So that minimizes the risk of scleral perforation, and that's the reason I prefer this one. And once it is done, basically, once the implant body is sutured to the sclera, you have to push this tube into the anterior chamber. Now, this is an important step, and the care should be taken at this step. So what I do is I usually use a 23G needle and go one wavelength, which would be like 2.5 millimeters behind the limbus. And then you go intrasclerally for about 2 to 2.5 millimeters till you have reached that point. And then you turn your needle inwards towards the center of the pupil. And also I like to turn it a little bit sidewards to give a little curved kind of track. So once that happens, and when you're coming out, once you have an anterior chamber now, and just make sure that you don't make a very wide track, but enough to push the tube. And then you come out, make a little side cut. Now that makes a slight funnel there at the opening, and the finding, the pushing the tube to that area becomes easy because the rest of the tunnel is very narrow. So it takes a little patience here. But you can, with patience, you can gradually push the tube into that tunnel. You notice that I haven't injected anything in the anterior chamber, and the AC never collapsed. So most of the time, that's what happens. You don't need to inject any viscoelastic in the anterior chamber. But if there's a difficulty, then you can inject some in the tunnel. So you can see, once you can see the tube is there in the anterior chamber, and you see a good amount of, good length of tube is there, which should be about 2 millimeters or 2.5 millimeters in the anterior chamber. Should be between the cornea and the iris without touching any of these structures. So once that is done, the next step is to push, is to cover this tube basically with some kind of a tissue patch grafted. I use a donor sclera from the eye bank, but you could use facial data or some other commercially available structure as well. Nowadays, if the tube is longer, so you have made a 3 millimeter in a tunnel with a needle, intracellular tunnel, then some people advocate that maybe that the patch graft may not be needed. But I like to put it because this gives you extra, layer of safety. The most important complication here that we want to avoid is the erosion of the tissue over the tube, because tube is a foreign material, and sometimes the erosion of the conjunctiva can happen, and that would lead to exposure of the tube and risk for endophthalmitis. Once the patch is put, pull the tenon and the conjunctiva together over the patch graft. Make sure that both the layers are pulled over, and the tenon capsule should not lag behind, which is important. And once this is done, you just suture it to the limbus and to get a nice closure so that there's no part of it is exposed. RD is slightly different, more or less the same, but it's a little bigger implant, and the wings of the RD, they have to go under the muscle. And also the tube has to be ligated, because this is a non-valve device, so the tube must be ligated. So this is a juvenile rheumatoid arthritis patient who had undergone multiple surgeries. The AC is very shallow, but you have an intraocular lens. So similar, the exposure is more or less similarly. Again, I'll put some pre-placed sutures there. And once the implant is inserted in place, tie the plate in place with the sutures. The wings have to go under the muscles. And once the suture is, when the plate is sutured, the next step is to, ligate this tube basically. So now this is 60 Vicryl I'm using. The tube has to be ligated, so and checked by pushing the tube bases through the tube so that it doesn't allow any fluid to go over the implant. So this will prevent early postoperative hypertonic because there's no valve in this tube. And the rest of the procedure is more or less the same, that you have a long needle tunnel. Here the AC is very shallow, so I put the tube behind the iris into the sulcus. So these are some of the publications we have managed. So basically, these valves are quite effective in complicated situations. And in a short-term basis, you can see whether it's ADI or AGV, all these patients are complicated, refractory patients. And you can see in 3 to 6 months time, both ADI and AGV, they give you almost similar IUP lowering, which is significant from the perioperative value. And this was a study from where AGV and ADI were put in the post-penetrating keratoplasty patients. And again, you can see even in post-penetrating keratoplasty patients, the IUP control is more or less similar in both these groups, at least on a short-term basis. If you look at the overall success rate of the these implants, they do reduce IOP significantly, because all these patients most of them are actually, they have a high based on IOP. So you can see over 50% reduction in IOP. And also the success rate overall would be somewhere around, around 70% in 3 to 5 years time. So that's a good success rate for most of these cases who are otherwise very poor risk for for surgery. So to summarize, glaucoma implants have an important role to play in lowering intraocular pressure. They are very useful in complicated situations, and the GDD, they irrespective of their design, they tend to give almost more or less similar IUP control. Some differences, of course, the smaller valve will give you a little higher pressures, and the larger surface area will give you a lower pressure. But over a period of time, So thank you very much for once again AIOS for this opportunity. I close my session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Finishing 1 minute before time and giving us some time for discussion. So, Dr. Sunita, are you there? Dr. Sunita, are you done?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, he has told me. I am just sharing the screen.
Yeah, please share the screen.
Okay, again, I think he told me, but again, I don't know, it is.
You try to play like this only, then can you
try to play like this only. Go for the next slide. Click on the next slide.
No, but it is videos, na? Should I? Now it
Yes.
Now it is okay. Now it is okay.
Okay, okay. Okay, so I'll be speaking on trabeculectomy. So as no trabeculectomy still remains the gold standard filtration surgery despite so many new surgeries. It's a partial thickness filtration procedure and there are several aspects of filtration surgery that determine the success or failure of procedure. So the long term of success of surgery depends on the preoperative factor, surgical technique, and various intra and post-operative measures. Preoperative workup is very, very important. Careful choice of surgical site is important, especially in patients who have undergone previous surgeries. Judicious use of antimetabolites. Actually, this is obstructing my view. Can you remove this toolbar from down because I'm not able to see? Hello?
Ma'am, click on PowerPoint, ma'am. Please go on there.
मैम दैट इज फ्रॉम जूम तो वो नहीं हो पाएगा नहीं तो वापस आपका वो फुल स्क्रीन पे नहीं आएगा
मैम माउस से कंट्रोल कर लीजिए
Yeah.
मैम आप माउस से कंट्रोल कर लीजिए पावर पॉइंट को हाँ अब क्लिक कीजिए मैम माउस से टच पैड पे टच कीजिए मैम
हाइड थंबनेल करो
What?
हाइड थंबनेल
मैम क्लिक से कर लीजिए कहाँ नहीं हो रहा तो क्लिक से या एरो यूज कर लीजिए मैम एरो
No, no, but I have to. Okay. Yeah.
Is it better now, ma'am?
Okay. So yes. So pre-operative workup is very, very important, and pre-operative counseling of the patient is important. It's important to explain the patient the nature of surgery and what to expect, and also about tell the patient about the complications, especially in patients since we are doing very advanced, we are doing surgery in very advanced stage. So it is important to even tell them about the wipeout phenomena. In trabeculectomy or any glaucoma surgery, it's important to stop aspirin and related anticoagulants so as to minimize bleeding during surgery, which can lead to scarring, and medications that increase the possibility of inflammation and filtration failure, such as PG analogs and pilocarpine, should be discontinued. And one may choose to start preoperative steroids or NSAIDs for very inflamed eyes, so as to prime the conjunctiva and make it less inflamed. As far as possible, reduce the pressure using intravenous mannitol if not contraindicated. The pressure should be normal before surgery so as to avoid complications of sudden hypotony. Also identify risk factors and plan and modify your technique accordingly. As I have already said, if there's excessive inflammation or if there is history of previous glaucoma surgery or conjunctival scarring, then modify your technique. A large anti-fibrotic treatment area is desirable to achieve diffuse non-cystic blephs with a lower risk of discomfort and leakage. And now with the modified Moorfield techniques, which most of us have adopted, with change in the area of anti-metabolite treatment, conjunctival and scleral flap construction, and use of releasable sutures have dramatically reduced the complications. You can use local anesthesia, however, inject minimal amount of anesthesia and try not to put pinky ball or excessive pressure onto the eye. Gentle massage is indicated. One can even do surgery under topical anesthesia or subtenous anesthesia. So I am basically going to discuss about the technique, and I prefer to use corneal traction sutures because it provides better exposure and there's no chance of creating a superior rectus hematoma which can trigger wound healing. However, there's a learning curve to it. So here the corneal traction suture is taken with 6-0 Vicryl suture, and the depth is important. You should not perforate the cornea, and it should be at the right depth. The conjunctival flap is very important. Fornix based is preferred by most of us as it allows wider application of mitomycin C and more diffuse bleb rather than this cystic bleb. Handle the conjunctiva very gently with non-tooth forceps, especially if it is thin and inflamed, as you can cause buttonhole. And blunt dissection is preferred. You can give these radial cuts to improve the exposure. So after this, gentle cautery. Don't do excessive cautery, otherwise it can shrink the sclera. Mitomycin application can be done in the form of injection or sponges soaked in 0.2 to 0.4 milligram per ml, and apply them over a wide area and count them and remove them, and then thorough wash is indicated. Scleral flap can be of any shape or size. However, it should be of uniform thickness, almost half scleral thickness, and it should be dissected tangential to the limbus in a uniform thickness. And as you approach limbus, stop short 1 to 2 millimeter behind the limbus on either side so as to facilitate posterior flow of aqueous. However, in the center, you have to dissect clear cornea. So I do it with this crescent, and so that, because you have to remove the block anterior to the scleral spur, including the corneal tissue also. And I do paracentesis with 30 gauge needle, and this pre-placed suture I always apply. Sclerostomy can be done with Vannas or Kelly sponge. Size should be that it is covered on either side with at least 1 to 2 millimeter scleral flap so that it can be nicely covered. And here I am removing it with Vannas. Iridectomy should be bigger, slightly bigger than the size of the sclerostomy so that it doesn't block. And then pre-placed suture is immediately tied. And now in most of my surgeries, I apply one suture fixed and one releasable. So releasable suture, this Kolker's technique from cornea to the scleral flap, and then from scleral flap to sclera, and then with 4th row knot, it is tied. So it is so that you can just pull it post-operatively from the cornea. So since you have not dissected till clear cornea, the posterior flow is facilitated and there's hardly any leak from the side. So you don't require to now give sutures on the sides, and on pressure there is enough flow. Conjunctiva, I started using purse-string suture, and from cornea to the conjunctiva, and then then you just apply the suture like a purse string at the edges of the conjunctiva. And then pull it onto the cornea and tie it. So in this way, you're just burying the knot inside this crowded conjunctiva, and this knot is not going to be exposed in the post-operative period. It doesn't cause any irritation or inflammation. And on the other side, in a similar way. And then in the center, I apply 1 or 2 mattress suture from cornea to conjunctiva and then back into the cornea to facilitate the flow of aqueous. Sorry, to make it watertight. So at the end of the surgery, you can see that the bleb is nicely formed, and you can inject some fluid and check the filtration. It is elevating and the pressure is normal. It should not be too high or too low. It is normal, and the AC is well formed and the bleb is well formed. So you can also use this Kelly sponge, which I routinely use in case of combined surgery. The rest of the procedure is similar. So post-operatively, as we all give post-operative steroids to reduce inflammation and cycloplegic, and we do bleb massage, digital massage. I think it's a routine practice to elevate the bleb post-operatively. You can release the sutures or do laser suture lysis. It is very simple. Under the slit lamp, you can just pull it with a 26 gauge needle and pull it on either side if you have put 2 sutures. And you can consider using 5
Dr. Sunita, can you just
Yeah.
sum it up?
Yes. So this is the last this thing. In some percentage of cases, you need to do needling. So I do it with 0.1 ml of 0.1 milligram mitomycin C. So repeated to and fro movements and side to side movements. You can just lyse the fibrotic tissue, and you can see the form of bleb at the end of. So this is pre and this is post. So a careful preoperative evaluation, meticulous surgical technique, and careful postoperative management, and early detection and aggressive treatment of complications leads to a successful trial. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sunita. That comes to the end of this session. Wonderful. We all finished in time and the debate was very well discussed. Thank you, chairperson. Thank you, speakers.